Uh, okay, I'm just checking that I'm recording. I think I'm recording. So the topic is the origins of propaganda. So let me share my screen with you. Um, I think you might remember from last week, each week at our main website, that's propaganda2019.com or 2017.com, a new window opens. And I was able to find an image of the original Edward Bernays cover from 1928. And of course, you will recognize, of course, the wire pullers, right? As in the first chapter, some of you talked about this in your Flipgrid responses. The first chapter emphasizes this idea that propagandists are like wire pullers. They're pulling the wires there in the book. So if you click on that box, you get to the agenda for tonight's class session. First of all, I wanted to see, have you guys had any experience with propaganda this week? Have you encountered any propaganda this week in your just regular life?
I'd say for like the Super Bowl and stuff like that should be some positive propaganda.
I totally agree here, Tom. Thanks for sharing. There was quite a lot of propaganda at the Super Bowl. Of course, I was paying attention to that Washington Post ad that was all about journalism and democracy. But there might have been other ads that caught your attention. Were there any other ads that caught your attention this week?
Not really. I couldn't really see any other ones that I could think of.
Yeah. I think the advertisers played it real safe this year. It was really fascinating to see relatively how conservative they were. Welcome, Nathan. I see you there. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm not sure if he can. I wanted to share with you a piece of propaganda that came across my radar screen this week. And to do that, I'm just going to take you to the Mind Over Media website. I'm going to take you to the Mind Over Media website. Here it is. This story broke in the news this week. I don't know if you guys saw it or heard about it. It's all about this issue of the governor of Virginia wearing blackface in the 1980s in his college yearbook. Give me a thumbs up if that story crossed your event horizon and you're familiar with it. I started wondering if that story was propaganda or not. And as I started trying to figure out if it was propaganda, I came across this. Whoa. It's a meme, right? And it says, Dr. Mengele still on the left, right? And this is the 1984 college yearbook of Governor Northam of Virginia. The image was circulated to try to force him to resign. The meme uses the term Dr. Mengele to refer to the notorious Nazi German who performed experiments on Jews. Northam has been criticized for his support of Planned Parenthood. So from my point of view, this is a really interesting piece of political propaganda. I think it's harmful because I think comparing any doctor to Joseph Mengele is not something you do lightly. You know what I mean? On the other hand, I can see how people who are critical of abortion and who want abortion to stop, right, are mad at this governor, and by comparing him to Dr. Mengele, they shift the discourse away from his purported racism to his purported support for abortions, right? They shift the topic.
and smear the left at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a really interesting example. We might call that frame shifting, right? Where it's exploiting the popularity or the timeliness of that topic, but shifting it in a particular way. Okay, so I ask you again, did you come across any pieces of, so that's some propaganda I came across this week. Did you guys come across any other propaganda? We've got the Super Bowl propaganda. We got the Governor Northam of Virginia propaganda. Did you come across any other propaganda this week?
I read a really interesting article from Mother Jones. It was actually from December, but it didn't come across my path until this week. It was all about that late in the year changing of the algorithm of Facebook that was actually decreasing the amount of news people get on their Facebook feed. I think it's part of Facebook's attempting to get away from controversial stuff. So they have been boosting all of the friends and family posts and decreasing the number of news from all sources. But it meant, you know, to a small press like Mother Jones, that they were getting less and less and less eyeballs, which is, you know, the only way they can make any more money. And so it was also a plea for money. Wow.
Yeah, that's a really interesting phenomenon, how the impact of Facebook's strategy to decrease focus on news has had huge implications for the journalism business. And of course, there were a whole lot of layoffs at BuzzFeed this past week, and Mother Jones is going out and hunting for money. So there's new fears that the online journalism business is failing because of the Facebook business model. Yeah, glad that crossed your radar screen.
I was at a meeting with David Cicilline this morning, and he said that he knew about this attempt at a consortium of smaller newspapers that were going to try and organize to be a more powerful voice in lobbying for the kind of changes that are needed to keep them alive.
Got it. So the politicians are trying to figure out how to support the journalism industry?
Well, he didn't say that. I mean, he's serving on the antitrust committee, but what he said, that's how he knew about this. But he said that he had just heard about it, that it was journalists and newspapers specifically that were banding together to try and have a bigger voice.
Cool. All right. So for next week, it'd be really good for you guys to keep on the lookout for propaganda. Obviously, you're going to be finding some propaganda examples on the Mind Over Media website as part of your Leap One project. I've been just scrolling through looking at some examples. There's really a lot of interesting stuff, including the Putin with the submachine gun, right? I don't know. You know, that's a very interesting piece of, where is it here? The Putin with the submachine gun, right? You know, the power of the strongman imagery as propaganda. So you'll find lots of interesting things here. Just a reminder, you can search by keyword. If you typed in terror, for example, you'd find terrorism propaganda, or if you typed in alcohol, you'd find alcohol propaganda, or you name it. And you can also filter by the propaganda strategy or technique to see only the propaganda that attacks opponents, for example, right? Or only the propaganda from the 2015 or 2016 or 2017. That's about as far back as this propaganda goes. So, and of course, you can also filter by country. So if you find a piece of propaganda that you want to use for your Leap One project and it's not on this website, all you do is use the upload button. And you'll notice that you can upload your own example of propaganda. That might be a bumper sticker that you see on somebody's car, or a billboard you see when you're driving to work. Give it a title, describe the source or use the URL, upload the image. If it's a Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube URL, you can put it there. Describe what it is, include who created it and where it appeared, if you know. Identify which technique was used to construct the propaganda. Explain why you think it is propaganda. Put your email, your country, and hit save, and it will show up here in the collection. Right now, there's about 3,000 examples of propaganda from all over the world. It'd really be cool if some of your examples were there. Let's see. Oh, so I wanted to point out that you guys have, almost all of you have sent me your blogs, and I was really pleased to be able to put those up on the class roster. Next week, when you submit your LEAP 1 project, where you critically analyze an example of propaganda, you'll be posting it to your blog, and you'll be able to see the work of your peers here by going to their website and looking for their LEAP 1. So I was really pleased. It's so cool to see all the different design choices that students make with their strategies for their blog. So that was kind of cool. But let's go to the Pathright, and I want to talk a little bit about Edward Bernays. Right? You guys did a really good job in beginning to think about Edward Bernays. I want to just make sure I'm actually linking there. Can you guys actually see the screen there? Give me a thumbs up if you can actually see the screen. The Pathright is now loading. It's loading a little slow here in Europe, but it's going around the world and getting there eventually. I was really pleased to see the quality of comments that you made in the Flipgrid for talking about Edward Bernays, and in the, wow, it is really slow. We'll just don't be tortured by that, why it's taking so long. Not sure. Yeah, there we go. Oh, why does it think I don't have an account? Okay, I have an account. All right, that'll do. Okay. So you guys had a little bit of a support in your reading of Edward Bernays' propaganda. And let's be honest, that book is a complicated read because so many of the references that he is referring to were unfamiliar, you know, famous celebrities or business leaders. It was sometimes a little bit challenging to read that, but I could see from the work that you've done here in the Pathright that you have managed to find some interesting ideas here. And so I really appreciated your comments on the Flipgrid platform. Again, you'll find that each session I give feedback to the strongest work by giving it a little star. So if you go back to week 1, you'll see that I've put some stars and made some comments next to the pieces I see that are strongest. And this Friday, after Friday when this is done, I'll watch these all and I'll put a little star or make a comment next to the pieces that I'm most impressed with. I might even write you an email if I really love your work. So I see Jessica, Megan, Pam, is that you? That's cute. Harrison, Olivia, really happy to see your work on that. And of course, these questions are really provocative, right? And in your comments on the reading, you also showed a good understanding of some of the real tensions that exist here in the tensions that exist here in the essay. One of the things I thought would be useful for us to do is kind of try to step back from the book and kind of look at it as a whole, right? So what I did here in the class for this week is I just pulled some quotes. Sometimes when I'm trying to synthesize a complicated work, especially if it's from long ago, I try to look for themes by pulling quotes that are really important. And so what I've done is created a kind of just a simple set of quotes from each chapter, right? So chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and so forth. How about if we do this as a kind of fun thing to do? Let's break up into some small groups. And I'm going to ask you to pick a quote by Bernays from the slide deck and explain whether or not it is still relevant. Because let's be honest, he was writing in 1928, that's almost 100 years ago. Not everything he had to say was still relevant, but some of it was. So pick a quote by Bernays and explain whether or not it's still relevant. Can you make a connection between a particular quote and the present time period? I think you can. So at this point, I'm going to give you a chapter to focus on. So Olivia, will you take on chapter 2, right? And Anthony.
Which Olivia?
Yeah, so in that slide deck, you'll just push forward till you get to chapter 2, right? So there's 21 slides there, so just push forward to chapter 2. Anthony, would you focus on chapter 3? And Nathan, can you do chapter 4?
Yep.
And Tom, how about chapter 11? Chapter 11 needs 2 people. Harrison, will you do chapter 11?
Sure.
Okay, and Jessica and Pam, will you do chapter, oh, let me see here. Hold on. Chapter 5 and chapter 6. You can pick from chapter 5 or chapter 6. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to go to your assigned chapter. You're going to read a couple of quotes that are there. And then I'm going to dump you into a small group discussion, and you're going to talk over, like, what does that quote mean? Is that quote relevant to 2019? Why or why not? And if it is relevant, what's an example of what's going on in the world today that might be connected? Give me a thumbs up if you understand the task that we're going to be doing for about 6 minutes. We got about 6 minutes of conversation about that. Thumbs up? Do you guys get the task, or do you have any questions?
Are we going to be able to? Are we going to be able to go through the slide deck?
Yeah, good. Yes, but to do that, you have to do something kind of tricky, right? So right now, the Zoom might be filling your screen. And what would be good right now is if you went to the class page, like I'm going to right now, and if you went to the class 2, Origins of Propaganda, and then this slide deck is something you can manipulate, right? You see how can you see how I'm kind of moving through it?
Yeah, I just had tried earlier. I couldn't, so.
Oh, you couldn't?
Okay. I just thought maybe you had to start the class before. I haven't tried now.
Okay, cool. It should be working. If you have trouble, just let me know. But that slide deck is forwardable and backwardable. And I think even if you click one of these buttons, you can kind of go to the slide share where it's stored and access it that way. All right, I'm going to give you guys about 6 minutes to talk over some of these deceptively simple sentences. You're trying to figure out, are these still relevant today? Why or why not? And if they are, how are they related to our experience today? Okay, I'm going to open up the breakout groups. We're going to just take about 6 minutes. I am going to start those right now. Okay, it's Olivia, Pam, and Tom in breakout room 1, Anthony and Harrison in breakout room 2, and Jessica and Nathan in room 3. Go for it. Aha! Boy, that took a while. Just checking to see if this microphone is working. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, I'm testing. Okay, now hold on. Okay, now I'm just checking. Is that working?
I can hear you.
Oh yeah, good show. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. That was so weird. So I'm now just kind of pulling up the slides here to see which chapter were you guys looking at?
4. Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Is there a quote from chapter 4 that you want to comment on?
Yeah, sure. So wait, what's the question we're supposed to be answering exactly?
It's still relevant. Edward Bernays was writing 100 years ago. Is this sentence still relevant today? Why or why not? Oh, there's chapter 4. There's sentence, right.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say it's relevant because he's talking about how like people feel like they're part of a herd or like in today, like part of society. But and even when we're alone, we still feel like we're part of that bigger thing. Like even though we might be by ourselves at certain points. And yeah, so I would say it's relevant.
I think it's relevant too because the way that it's phrased reminds me of how people become socialized to do certain things, and it's something that's not explicitly stated, but more of an implicit kind of rule that affects the way people behave even when they don't realize it. And that's kind of what it sounds like it's referring to a little bit here.
Yeah, when it says like men are rarely aware of the real reasons which motivate their actions, that's kind of like related to propaganda and how it like kind of tries to persuade us, using our emotions, and we kind of just like kind of take it in without like maybe logically thinking about it or knowing all the facts about what it's talking about, but it still draws our attention.
Yeah. What do you think about that next sentence? Many of man's thoughts and actions are compensatory substitutes for desires which he has been obliged to suppress. Is that true today? Do you still believe that, or what does that mean even?
Um, I don't know.
Compensatory substitutes for desires which he has been obliged to suppress. You know, Edward Bernays was the nephew of
Oh,
Sigmund.
Freud.
Say it, Jess?
Of Freud.
Yeah. And so when I read that sentence, I think, okay, Freud's always talking about sex and death. What are the compensatory substitutes for sex and death? I think today the philosophy of Sigmund Freud is not held in quite the same esteem that it was back then. But the idea that you buy a big truck so that you can be strong on the highway, right? Maybe that's a compensatory substitute for the desire of being strong and aggressive, right? You have a big truck.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's really insulting to say that we feel ourselves to be a member of a herd, which is why I liked your point, Jessica. You said, well, it's just socialization. So now we use that word, socialization, because that idea that we're part of a herd, that sounds so animalistic, right? And
Yeah.
that's a very unflattering way to describe it. If you say, oh, it's socialization, it sounds better. So Jess, what chapter did you have to look at?
I think I had chapter 5 or 6, but for some reason on the website, the slide deck isn't loading for me.
Oh, it's not loading for you? Okay, let's take a look. I think you can see from on my screen, right? Chapter 5.
Yeah.
So let's see what you think about this sentence. Simple sentences.
I think I kind of agree with it. It seems a bit counterintuitive, I guess. I think a lot of what kind of advertising is about right now is that it's staying one step ahead of the game of trying to anticipate, I guess, the needs or wants of the consumer, while also equally relying on, I guess, feedback and what customers are demanding.
Mm-hmm. When I see this, I like this line, a company cannot afford to wait until the public asks for its product. And I think about, I can't tell you how many cell phone ads I have seen in the last week. They must know that, I'm ready for a new cell phone, right? Because now I see cell phone ads everywhere. And it's sort of like presenting to me what I should want in my new cell phone before I really even have a want, right?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, kind of telling the customer what they want before they, I guess, know they want it, or maybe they don't even want it to begin with, but they're being told to consume it.
Yeah, we kind of actually talked about this in my business comm class last semester, and how Ford came out with the automobile before society knew they really needed it or wanted it, but then it obviously became what it is today. And yeah.
Right. So Bernays is clearly in that, and about at the same time period as when Henry Ford was thinking about that as well. So supply must actively seek to create its corresponding demand. So if you've got a factory turning out cars, you got to create a demand for those cars, right? So then you might start a magazine that has travel pictures and see, like, look at, you can drive up to upstate New York and see how pretty it is, right? To make people want to have a car for travel. But I think that last sentence is pretty powerful. To make customers is the new problem. Is that relevant today, though? For God's sakes, we're so consumerized already. Is that still an issue or not? To make customers is the new problem. And have you encountered any companies that are making consumers in your lifetime?
Does that count as like a brand that people feed into a lot and purchase more for the branding than for the product itself? Like Nike or?
Yeah, it could. So you want to create customers who are loyal to Nike as a brand? I've been thinking a lot about, like, how do people become customers of Fortnite? And what's the, mechanism by which you become loyal to that product, right? So that's kind of where the herd mentality comes in a little bit too, I think.
Are we still supposed to be in the breakout room?
I think you are in the breakout room, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Should I close that breakout room? I'm going to close that breakout room now. Have everybody go back. You should get like a little notification now that says, come back, come back, come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we lose Dr. Hobbs?
I'm back. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Clearly, I'm farther away. You guys are all in Rhode Island, and I'm like over here in Europe, so that's why I'm a little bit slow. So is Eddie Bernays' ideas still relevant in the 21st century? Why or why not?
I think chapter 11, the idea that control the media propaganda is still pretty relevant, because definitely, like, people are gonna control what they want other people to see from the media perspective of it, and commercials and television, stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a new idea when Bernays raised it in the 1920s, and it's still going strong today. Thanks, Tom. Any other ways that is Bernays' work ideas still relevant in the 21st century? Why or why not? All right, you guys must be even more tired than I am. So one of the things that we talked about in our group was there in chapter 4, there was this reference to the idea that people are like a herd and they just follow the herd, right? And we just want to be part of a group. We'll do anything to follow the herd. And Jess said something like, well, today we call that socialization. right? And so we don't use such negative animal-like imagery to say we're all following the herd. We talk about socialization as a normal part of how people come to be a part of a group, right? And to see themselves in relation to the norms of the group. But then we also stumbled onto some language about sex and death and the suppressed desires that people have. And we were reminded that Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, right? And so Sigmund Freud was very famous for thinking about the way that humans act on our unconscious impulses for sex and death. And clearly Edward Bernays was really influenced by that idea and had some ideas about the sort of unconscious impulses that we have that we can't express in a polite society. You know, our drive for sex and our drive for death, hard to express in polite society, but Freud and Bernays thought that those were really important factors for understanding the power of communication. So in some ways, the Bernays book also helps us understand how he thought propaganda was an ethical practice, right? Very clearly in chapter 4, he says, if you're not being transparent about who you are, you're being unethical. And you should never pretend to be somebody you're not when you're being a propagandist. He also says you shouldn't have any competing clients. If you're working for one company, you shouldn't work for the competitor, that you can't be an ethical propagandist that way and play both sides of the fence. And he also said that you shouldn't lie in creating propaganda, and that if you did lie in creating propaganda, you weren't being ethical. So Eddie Bernays had some ideas about what it meant to be an ethical propagandist, and that's absolutely an important thing for us to keep in mind this semester. So let's turn to the Pathright and talk a little bit about the activities that I'm hoping that you will complete for next week. So let me just see if I can move to those right now. Our topic for
I have
next
a question.
Yeah. Question.
I noticed that on the Pathright for last week's like video chat that there were questions to answer after. Do you only answer the questions if you didn't attend the video chat?
Correct. And you probably
Okay.
have some challenges. That's right. If you're participating here, then you don't have to answer those questions. You just by showing up and giving an hour of your time to talk on the Zoom, you get the points. But for students who aren't here in the live session, they can answer those questions to demonstrate their understanding and get class participation points that way. Although, as we discovered, there's some challenges to my recording skills. So that was not a complete recording last week, but I'm getting better. I'm learning how to do it here. Let's take note of the fact that your critical analysis of propaganda is due not next week, but the week after next. Does anybody have any questions about the LEAP 1 project? This is the first major creative project that you're doing for this class, and it's due on February 22nd. What questions do you have?
I have another question. So when we submit the LEAP, we just like tweet the hashtag and that's it? That's all we do to submit it?
Yes, so what you do is you produce that work and you upload it to your blog. So you're publishing your LEAP 1 to your blog, and then you tweet a link using the COM416 hashtag. And then I'll know it. I'll know you submitted it. I'll find it on my Twitter, and then I'll click on the link and I'll get right to your work. So that's how I'll find your work and grade it. And then when I grade it, I send you an email with a detailed response to your work. I'm glad you asked that question, Olivia, because I bet other people have questions about that. So that's how you're sharing it with an audience. What other questions do you have about Leap 1? Okay, got it. Sorry?
If we have a Twitter for another course, can we use that to tweet you?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, you can create a new Twitter for this class, or you can use one you already use. Later on, as the semester goes on, we're going to experiment with using Twitter for propaganda purposes. So that's why I need you to start beginning to use it now. We're going to use it a little bit more actively. Our topic for this week, so we kind of did a little bit of a discussion of history. I hope some of you do get a chance to watch the Look Who's Back film, and if you do, I know you're going to love it. But the week 3, our topic directly relates to the work that you're going to be doing for Leap 1. And so I believe that the work that you're doing this week will prepare you well for doing a great job in Leap 1. Let's take a look at it. The focus question is, what media literacy concepts help people critically analyze propaganda? Your first project is to annotate a meme. I've been paying a lot of attention to memes these days, and I picked 6 of them, right? And so they're 6 curious and interesting memes from all parts of the internet, Reddit and Instagram and you name it. They're loading super slowly because I'm here in Italy, but there are 6 memes. They're all about the wall in different ways, right? So memes are like modern propaganda posters. So what I'd like you to do is join a team of meme analysts to critically analyze a meme. And so I've broken you up into teams. So Nathan, where are you? You can see, there you are. You're the ET team, right? Anthony, you're the straws team, and so forth, right? So this is an activity that involves using a digital annotation tool. Digital annotation tool is really cool. It's just a way for a group of people to write on a digital document together. And so again, this has taken a little bit of time because I'm so far away, but soon it will load up and you're going to see it's like kind of like a very simple worksheet. One of the ways to begin to think about how you critically analyze media is to use a worksheet type tool like this. This tool uses a web application called Cami. You can sign up for this with your URI Gmail or any Gmail. And Cami is updating, oh great. And there's the meme. You can see it now. It says, if illegal aliens use plastic straws in California, will they finally be deported? Okay, so I'm invited to work with this team to answer these questions. Message, draw arrows to the visual elements that communicate the message. Think about how line, color, graphics, depictions of people and words and symbols are used. And see right here, this bar, I can annotate this text with a drawing tool and I can draw up like an arrow like that. Are you guys seeing me do that? Can you see me do that? Yeah, and I can add a little text box here that says, the Futurama guy looks suspicious. So I'm showing you that I understand that the meme is relying on the representation of the Futurama guy looking suspicious. But now I have to tackle the rest of the message. What is the message? If illegal aliens use plastic straws in California, will they finally be deported? So I've got to think a little bit about what kind of commentary this meme is making about the environmental movement. I think it has something to do with that, right?
Because plastic straws are illegal now in California.
Aha! So that is helpful. But then I also have to analyze using the other blocks. And you can see that the other blocks invited me to reflect on the target audience, the potential consequences of the message. You guys should have a lot of fun with these meme posters. I mean, check them out. They are fun. And by doing it collaboratively, you can add a little bit and the person in your team can add a little bit. So you don't feel like you have to do everything, but between the team of you, you should have a really good time with that project. So that's the first project. That's kind of like a warm-up activity for thinking about how to analyze media messages. Now here's another activity. This is kind of a major activity. I want you to choose one of these two articles. They're both about media literacy and propaganda. One is by Sproul called The Authorship and Origins of the 7 Propaganda Devices, a research report, and the other is by me and a former student who was in fact enrolled in this class years ago, called Teaching About Propaganda, an Examination of the Historical Roots of Media Literacy. The same thing is happening. You're going to use the Kami for Chrome PDF annotation. When you click on the link, the Kami automatically opens. And you're going to read the article, and as you read, you're going to try to make 2 highlights, 2 comments, and 2 questions. And if you want, you can reply to others as well. So this is an experience where you and other students in the class read and kind of mark up a text. And one of the things that's really cool is that there's a lot of different ways you can mark up the text. I've demonstrated a couple of those here. So for instance, you can use the comment tool, that's this thing right here, see where it says comment, to make notes in the margin. And then you can reply to, like that. You can use the text box to make comments on the document. That's this one right here. And of course, I showed you guys how to use the drawing tool, right? The drawing tool. So this article is a pretty interesting article, but it gets even more interesting when you are reading it collaboratively, and using the highlight tool. Like I'm going to make green highlights. I am really interested in this group called the Institute for Propaganda Analysis, which was founded in 1937, right? So this activity should be a fun way to read and kind of discuss. You won't be in real time, but you'll still be able to discuss this reading. The most important reading of the week is this really important article that directly relates to LEAP 1. It's called The 10-Step Method for Analyzing Propaganda. This is a chapter that walks you through those 10 questions that are in LEAP 1 that you're required to answer for LEAP 1. And this is a good chapter to read before you start working on your LEAP 1. So after you read this chapter, what I'd like you to do is just pick one of the 10 questions and explain that question, why that question's important, what are the elements of that question in your own words on the flip grid, right? So in your explanation, the best way to do that is to use an example of some kind of propaganda you've encountered in your real life to explain your understanding of that question. So it's really good for us to have a good understanding of those questions before we get too deep into it. Now, notice, next week, we don't have a synchronous class on February 12th. Why? Because I'm literally getting on the plane at the exact same time as this class. coming back to Boston. So the timing just didn't work out. So if you have any comments or questions this week, you can put them here. But since we won't be having a synchronous class, I've also created another opportunity for you to, some people learn best by watching videos. And so you can watch this illustrated lecture. It's probably a little bit like what I'm going to be talking about here in Italy, a little bit. It's called Finding Truth in an Age of Digital Propaganda. And after you watch this video, you can make a comment, make a connection between the ideas in the lecture and your own experience. Oh, in the YouTube comment thread. So that's a very public comment, right? All right, so that's the week. A big chunk of work, really. But these activities are designed to help you be resilient in the face of propaganda. That's the plan anyway. What questions do you have about this work? All right, no questions? That means you guys are feeling up for it and ready. I think you'll enjoy using the digital annotation tool. I think you're going to love reading about the 10-step method for analyzing propaganda. That's really going to put you on your game. And as you look at those memes, it's going to open up your mind about making your choice. You must choose an example of contemporary propaganda for your LEAP 1 to analyze. And I suspect after this week, you will be all over picking something absolutely brilliant and awesome and interesting for your LEAP 1 project. So I think this week will get you really ready and well prepared for doing your LEAP 1. All right, so I won't see you next Tuesday, but I'll see you the Tuesday after that. All right, and you guys know that the best way to reach me is by Twitter. You know, there's this really nice direct message function where you can DM me, and I'm checking this thing 15 times a day. In fact, Pam, aren't you and I the only ones so far who are actually using the Twitter sphere? It's true.
I don't know. No, I thought I saw somebody else on there.
Maybe, but I don't know. Hold on just a second. Did I see anybody else besides you and me? So far, I think we're the only ones. Harrison, didn't you start a Twitter?
I did, yeah. I created a new one just because I retweet a lot of dumb stuff on my personal Twitter, so I figured I'd make one for this class.
Why not? Nothing wrong with that at all. One of the things that I'm doing now that I'm looking for you guys to begin tweeting is I'm just going up here to the top and I'm typing in hashtag. Let's see if I can do this. Hashtag COM416. Oops. I don't know if those two hashtags are going to make it work at all. Maybe not. And I'm finding all kinds of things. I've been tweeting some really interesting findings that I find. And did that actually show up? No. Hold on here. You know, my computer's just not working so good out over here. But you're going to see some examples of some really interesting content, and yeah, it's definitely not. It's slowing down tonight. Oh yeah, look, page unresponsive. Look at that. Okay, exit. I'm out of there. Oh snap! Said Twitter. All right, let's try one more time here before I let you go, because I do want you to be thinking about using all the resources that are available to you. And one of them is that the world is full of absolutely fascinating news about propaganda. It is the hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. Here's what's the latest. Yeah. So let's see here. What's on the chart here? Oh yeah, I tweeted about the blackface, about the right brain, left brain. So check out the Twitter stream and add something if you like, all right? Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. We'll wave goodbye, and I won't see you next week, but I'll really look forward to seeing you the week after that. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is the amazing students of COM 416 at the University of Rhode Island. You rock, guys. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.